We're in conversation with the Provincial Minister, Anton Bredell, Provincial Minister of Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Sure, it's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
Sure. Talking about this year, it's a big year. It's an election year.
Massive.
What is at stake?
Everything is at stake. We're running out of time.
Sure.
If you look at the infrastructure of a place like Knysna, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I've been to Knysna once.
When it had water.
When it had water. But now, it's quarter to Joburg. How do the people of Knysna find themselves in the situation that they do?
It's bad management.
Bad management.
Can we deal with this? It's not politics.
I really hope the people of Knysna
Yes.
are listening to this podcast so that they know what is happening with their water. The DA Podcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It's so good to have you guys with us. And today we have the Provincial Minister, Anton Bredell, with us, who is the Minister for Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Minister, welcome to your very first DA podcast.
Yay!
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure having you with us. I know that you've been extremely busy, which we'll get into, but you know, we love to start right at the beginning here on the podcast. And a question we always love to ask people is, how did this all start? How did you eventually end up in politics?
Sure. Moved from Stellenbosch with the family to Darling, little town in the West Coast, a family business. And if you're in a little town, you start to get involved with the community. So there was a big need at that stage because obviously poverty is in your face.
Yeah.
A big need to get a centrum where we can get people together. And it was the first multi-purpose centre, these days Tucson centres, built in the province. It was built in Darling, the Darling Focus building. So made representations to the West Coast District Municipality to get the funding and those kind of things. So the community picked up on that. And then the elections came and they said, but those days we had traditional councils where the interim councils.
Yeah.
So when they move over to the election, they asked me and they nominated me to stand, and there it starts. So become the mayor there, and then
Crazy.
bigger municipalities, Swartland mayor. So it goes
But I
on.
mean,
that's interesting.
It's interesting. It is interesting because I think you obviously there was a career before that as well. You studied marketing and sales. I mean, I was going to ask
In
you
the
to sell this
90s.
glass.
In the 90s.
I was going to ask you to sell a glass of water.
Don't give away my age, man. Don't be like that now. Business is always in my blood. And if you're in the rural areas, you grow up in the environment. So the environment is very close to me, etc. But the community, the needs of the community, you see people suffer.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. And how do you rectify that? How do you get the imbalances in South Africa?
Yeah.
It's difficult questions you start to grapple with. It's then at a very small scale and it's close to home. So it's easier to grapple with. And then I said to my wife, listen, I like this because I've been nominated to the bigger council now, to Swartland Municipal Council. You look after the business, I will go on this route because politics is also, you're not sure what's going to happen in 5-year terms, that kind of thing.
It's like a sale.
So I went, we then moved to Malmesbury, mostly because the children were small and the schooling and.
Okay.
And then Malmesbury is also closer to the city of Cape Town, the N7, those kind of projects. So this is how it all started. And then Helen, we won the city in 2006. She became the mayor. Our next focus was to win the province in 2009. We managed to get that. And then Helen asked me to become the Minister of Local Government. So I'm the longest serving MEC of local government in the country.
Record-breaking people right on the podcast.
That is a very, very long time. Now, Anton, you spoke about your wife and your kids. Can you tell us a little bit about how family life has been since you've been in the space of politics?
First of all, anybody who enters the space must do it with the backing of their family. Otherwise, because your time is not yours anymore. A lot of people's got a lot to say about politicians and salaries and well, if you're a real politician, you want to uplift your community, you work 7 days a week.
Correct.
There's no time, there's no hours. I mean, my friends call us the 2-day holiday crowd because you go back and they say, oh, but you're back. Say, there's another disaster, I'm back. And your family must fall into that, otherwise you will have trouble at home. So my kids and my wife, they accepted it. And she keeps the whole town fit. She's a fitness instructor, not The only person she's not keeping fit.
Or let's just rephrase that. You're clearly not listening to her advice.
Oh, I'm not listening to her advice.
There we go.
But yeah, so everybody's happy, and you need that also because it's stressful. I always tell people, you see the pain of other people, and you tend to take that home, and you need to have a comfortable environment where you can release a bit of the stress, otherwise you will fall apart.
Sure.
That's so true.
And I think, Anton, I mean, a lot of people that are politicians, and we've seen it really is your family making the biggest sacrifice to give you over to this almost higher calling to serve the country. And I mean, you're spending so much time away from your family. It must be one of the craziest things. But what would you say has been one of the biggest challenges and perhaps one of the biggest positives of, in a way, being given over to serve the country while you leave the family at home?
Sure, that's a difficult one. That's a long conversation. You must ask them that question. Excellent. You must invite them. Listen, if you work for your community, you become their asset. You must be there all the time. I can't go shopping with my family just and relax. Somebody will tap you on the shoulder, tell me, I don't have water. The family just continue. They just continue walking. They know their father. And it doesn't matter where you get. I mean, the other day they invited me to be a guest speaker in Hamburg, and they had a water week there. And even in Hamburg in the hotel, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, you from South Africa, you coming from George area. Hey, I said, yes, okay, here we are. So people know us, and you become their property. Yes. So you cannot become angry when they call on you, or then you're in the wrong industry. Then you must never become a politician.
Sure.
You must understand that the people's got needs, and you must be there for them all the time.
Yes. And what about this? So I'm a ward councillor, and I get that exactly that. On a Sunday when I go to a Woolies or whatever, someone will always, and my wife knows already, she just has to go to the car, wait for me there, and then. But what about this sort of line where it's sort of like, I also need downtime, or I'm with my family, can you protect that? I mean, can you give me some advice as a young politician sitting opposite the table?
That's a very important question. And luckily, I've got very good people around me. So people with the same value set, a PA that protects you also, because they know, first of all, when you've got children, as a father, you also need to lead by example. So there's days when they need you. And I've just ended up next to a rugby field or next to a cricket field. I just end up there. And it's because your personal assistant, help work with your wife. They arrange that. You don't have a say in that. What is also very important, I think, is that I don't see anybody from the public at my home. My home is my private space.
It has to be.
So if a person wants to see me, I say, I will meet you in the Wimpy. Or I will meet you in the Spur. I must not advertise any. But I will meet you at the coffee shop. I don't meet you at home. Even if they come to my gate, I'll tell them, listen, sorry, this is my family space.
Sure.
So I've got my home is my space.
Yeah. Sure.
I think that's so important, especially, as you said, Donovan, for younger politicians coming into the space, because you've been here for a while, Anton, and you have a lot of experience in this space. And I too am finding, I don't have any kids, Anton, but even with my nieces, I sometimes feel bad that I'm not spending enough time with them, because you're going from your constituency to Parliament, back to your constituency in different regions. So we just want some more advice from you, right? So how do you suggest we try and balance that family life, and how did you do it? So I know you speak about the PA, your PA, your personal assistant helping you, but before that, how did you sort of balance your family life and your work life together?
Well, first of all, you must go into this with their blessing. And if you go into the blessing, obviously you will have a conversation, and you'll tell them this is the expectations of the job. I'm going to be 24/7. My phone will ring in the middle of the night. It might be not my portfolio. It might be a colleague who drops people, and they phone you, and you must take them from the hospital to. Remember, when you start off in the rural area, you're from the ambulance driver to you everything. You know it. You're a ward councillor. So, and the public will call on you. Now, if you're not in for that, then you must not take up the job.
Yes.
And that's why many politicians fail.
Gotcha.
Because after a week, I always tell people, and we as the DA, we interview people a lot. We go through this professional system.
Oh, PCP.
PCP and all those kind of things. The most important thing for me from politicians, they must be available.
Okay.
It all starts there. If you don't pick up your phone, I can't talk to you. You can't help me. Even if the answer is no, and that's something that politicians struggle with, to say to the public, listen, the answer is no. I cannot help you because X, Y, Z. And we must understand that. But if you're not available, then you're in trouble. And it's funny because we all canvass. And it's funny Congress time. As you start to phone your own colleagues to vote for you,
Yes.
you see how little of them are available.
Absolutely.
And that's a problem.
But Anton, sometimes we watch them phone because we know what they're phoning for. And then
Just
we
ignore
put
it.
the phone down.
Yeah.
Hey, this bonfire's getting too hot.
Yeah, if they want to pull you into something like a Congress or something else, if the community the community phones you, it's you need to talk to them.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And
I
you
agree.
need to, even if you disagree. I said I do it a lot because I've got the environmental portfolio.
Yes.
It's a difficult portfolio
Tough
to
one.
balance. It's a tough one to balance the environmental needs with the economic growth needs. And sometimes the answer is going to be no. So a lot of times they will phone the Premier and say, yeah, Anton, I say, no, Premier, I've answered them. The answer is no. It's still no. You know? So it's one of those things. We need to have those lines and blocks. And it's also how you put your office together when
Got
you've got office. Your office personnel must exactly understand the pressures, the needs, because my emails, it's very often that I go to bed and I haven't answered all my emails. Why? Because we've got one email address, 3 people is working on that. Because you get like 3,000 emails a day. You can't even open them and close them. But if you've got 3 people working on that, they take off all the things that you don't need to deal with,
Yes.
and they will tell you there's 10 emails, you must deal with
Okay.
those 10 or those 15. And that helps a lot.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes.
So we are talking to Anton Bradal, and I mean, a very interesting portfolio: local government, environmental affairs, development planning. It's quite a mouthful. But Anton, what do you do when you wake up every day? Like, what does your job entail? I mean, I'm looking at, provincial minister, local government, environmental affairs, development planning. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So what are you doing?
We've got a brilliant team, I must tell you, and we've built this team over the years because it's 2 departments. So your local government's got the different challenges and as your environmental, but
Okay.
brilliant teams. The environmental team also got a specific intellect qualifications, like the biodiversity experts. There's a lot of experts in biodiversity and in preservation, etc., and in air pollution, quality management, waste management, all those things is very much so. I leave my house around about 5:30 in the morning.
Sure.
It's good. It's actually to get through the traffic. It's easier.
5 a.m. club.
And you get to the office, and then you can start to work. Especially, don't answer the phones up till 8, around about 8, so that you can do with those emails and
Got
those
you.
things. So when the day actually starts, then those is off your table.
Got you.
So you can start to run with your personnel. You lead by example. First of all, you must understand when we took over, there was a lot of corruption, a lot of difficult issues that we had to deal with, and you need to lead by example. People will follow you if you lead by example. So no corruption. You don't play politics in your office. There's no political slogans, tokens, anything, because when you're in the office, you're in the office for the people of the Western Cape.
Gotcha.
I sworn an oath to the people of the Western Cape. And if your personnel picks up on that, you start off by telling them, I'm not interested in your politics. I'm interested in your quality that you bring to the table. Let's start to solve it. Let's start to work with that. There's never a boring day. That I can promise you. And then you must also understand that there's big issues, and These days, because I'm the appeal authority, I don't read a lot of books. Sometimes the Premier will give us a book, but if I spend my time, I spend it on reading an appeal because I'm involved in 72 court cases. With the province of court cases, especially on the environmental side.
Are those appeals from municipalities or
appeals from public, from applications, and we've got a beautiful biodiversity. So people they challenge you and they take you to court. So when I read normally that. But this businessman, I heard something. He said that he's keeping 1,000 balls in the air, but there's 6 golden balls, and you must not let them drop.
Wow.
And that's so there's big issues, and you need to deal with that. You need to identify that. You can maybe drop some of 2 of the smaller balls, but the big issues you can.
I can pick up that you've obviously been a learner of leadership or student of leadership, if I may say, because you've mentioned this term now, leading by example, multiple times, which I think is quite refreshing to hear from a politician, because it signals that there's something in leadership to you that's important and you make that part of your life. Where did that come from? Is it something that your father taught you? Is it something that you picked up as you joined the ranks of politics?
I think something else. I think it's a passion for our country to make it work. You need leaders to make it work. And then you start to read about leadership. You start to study leadership. So the mayors will tell you, we started off, when we took over before 2009, we had this a year or two where you say we need to prepare to lead. And don't say the name where we met, but we've met out at a venue where myself, Timon van Essen, a couple of us, because there was at that stage 3 DA-run councils. After the first walkover clauses, there were 3 DAs kept standing. So we were privileged because we had the information and we wanted to share and wanted to start to build. So once a quarter we met with the then MPs and the mayors and the leaders in council. And we work through the Structures Act, the Systems Act, the MFMA. We start to say, listen, guys, when you're in government, you cannot govern like the ANC. Then people might still just keep on voting for them. You do things differently. You draw the line. So one of the first things was to institutionalize. When somebody comes to an interview and they carry a DA hat, you don't employ them. You don't want to employ DA, you want to employ somebody for their skills. And to get that message through the system was difficult because, listen, if we're in government, our people must get work. I said, who's your people? In my community, it's the whole community. And if you start to understand, so I've done a lot of reading on leadership, and every PowerPoint I present to them, I will have a leadership, because leaders must think, they must know, they must guide, and it's something that you build over years. I'm a firm believer you never stop learning in life. Even if I sit here, even this December, I've learned a lot about the crises that we enter.
It's amazing.
That is so true. And, especially since the GNU, I think one of the things that the DA has definitely stood out against the rest is that we want to change our country. And we are here because we wake up every single morning to make a difference in our country. And that has to set us apart from the ANC. We can never be like the ANC that only cares for themselves, only cares for the people that they vote for, but for every single person. And Anton, your portfolio is huge. You're dealing with local governments, so municipalities and towns across the province. You're dealing with environment, you're dealing with development planning. And to have such a big portfolio, obviously you have to have really good leadership. But what does it mean? What does your job entail when it comes to local government, when it comes to environment, when it comes to development planning? Like, what is it?
And I, like a good politician, take a gap here. I want to, before I answer you, you see, I tell the public this, and I deal with this a lot, because people will phone me and they're angry. The fires, you to blame because you haven't dealt with aliens. So these days when I start the speech, I say, let's just first look at the context. So we come to you in a context of South Africa. What is that context? 65 million people. I need to write some of the stats down. We've got a growing population of around about 830 to 850,000 people a year. That's Mangasun City, Bloemfontein. We need to build every year Bloemfontein in South Africa to accommodate the growth, only the growth. Okay. Then you sit with 28 million people that's on state pension, 18 million on welfare pension, and around about 10 million get the 370 grant, the COVID grant. Meaning that they poor. They're under what do you do with 370 rand? Then you sit with 7.7 million people paying tax. Of which 1.5 million paying 77% of the tax. Now, government income is like tax, income tax, value-added tax, and corporate tax. That's the Then you add to that basket of red flags, youth unemployment at 58 to 60%. You add to that basket unemployment at 32% and expanded unemployment to 42%. That's the red flags we sit within, which we need to operate at. The local government space, I always tell people that the country's problem is not money. It's not money. We've got enough money. It's the decision making on that and where do we spend the money and. So the local government space, we get a lot of critique these days. People will tell, especially the ANC, because they can't get the councils to clean audits and they will tell you we can't eat clean audits. It's something that the community grab onto because, yes, they're still poor. So it's something that actually, but maybe it makes sense. Well, my counter argument to that is you can't eat corruption either.
Correct.
Actually, we should get to a stage where to get a clean audit should not something that you brag about.
Yes.
It's just something that needs to happen.
It's a normal thing.
It must be just a normal thing.
Absolutely.
So why do we make this an issue? Remember, Trevor Manuel target was to get all councils, 257 councils in the country, to clean stated by 2015. So the ANC can't get there. Now they try to deviate this whole ship.
Yes.
Good financial management is a no-go. It's not negotiable.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. You must get that. Yes, good financial management doesn't mean everybody's got services. That's a different debate. How do we get there? And there you must add the pressure of population growth. The pressure that towns grow, economic growth.
Yeah.
And where we failed, and that is the problem with corruption, the people that steal money steal the future of our children.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if that money has gone into infrastructure, into water, into my biggest fight currently, passion. We can talk about this all day.
I love how you put passion and fight next together.
But we debate a lot, and it was something like. One morning I stand up, I said to the mayors, I said, the problem here is that even in the DA, we've lost our ability to debate issues. If the two of us differ, we're enemies. It's mad. We must open up the debate. You've got a different background, you've got a different qualification. Everybody's got a different skill. Let's put all the skills on the table. Let's talk about it. And you know what? If we listen properly to one another, then we will each go out richer and better. So, and I start to grapple with this poverty, inequality, unemployment. We're in for a tough ride. How do we get ahead of this? So one day I said to the Premier, what is government's role in South Africa? What is our role in the Western Cape? Every citizen must have a dignified life. That is what I want for every citizen. If you ask me, what do you want? That is what I want. So I then called my team in. I said to them, listen, our role is to give people dignity, dignified life. But what do we need? What does it mean on services? So we then embarked on a program with the University of Stellenbosch. And they've done a study for 2 years. And out of that study, in the Constitution, you get 6 kiloliters of water, 50 units of electricity. And we think we're great because we give that to people. The study shows that you need 10 kiloliters of water, 150 to 200 units of electricity, etc., etc. Now, just on the electricity, the mayors would tell me, did you smoke something this morning? Are you mad? We cannot afford...
Are you mad?
Yeah, we cannot afford the 50 units. How are we going to get? I said, that's my target.
Yes.
I said to them, if you don't steal, we can get there. The country's problem is not money. And my counter-argument to the people that tell me there's no money, so right, if we put 150 units of electricity in each house to 200, then I don't have to go and fetch the child in prison one day.
Sure.
The hospital bills will get, because people will be in home, they will have the ability to study. We must just think through this, have an open and honest debate. And can I, as a government, bring in a system that, okay, you get your 50, I will give you another 100 if your child is in school.
Yeah.
Because then government's got a benefit. Let's talk through these things. Because I think in our grant system, there's still a lot that we can do better. That's on the government. That's just part of the government thing, especially on the water and fires. But then on the environmental thing.
Can I just say quickly, Anton? I mean, I love what you're saying because it's so fundamentally important. I think we have so many people in government that just want to meet the objective, but no one's really thinking about the outcomes.
Yes.
Because the outcomes is
Yes.
we are not just meeting the objective of the goal, but what happens after that
Yes.
objective is met to the community. And that's what I love about what you're saying, because you are going further than just saying, well, we have a clean audit. It's correct. Some people can't eat a clean audit, but what is the outcome of that clean audit to the
Absolutely.
community
Services
and the
delivered.
impact? So I think it's refreshing to hear this, because I think we need to start working more into what our outcomes and impact to society and communities are, rather than simply just saying we've met and ticked this box.
And the tip for young politicians, you say you're young.
Yes.
That means I'm old.
Listen, Anton, you said it. We didn't say it.
We didn't.
For young politicians, it's important to realize that all of a sudden you will find yourself that, listen, I've worked this whole day on emails, on computers, and. But actually, I spent 80% of my day now on the people, the haves. People who are well off.
Sure.
Because they can write nice emails, they can write difficult emails. And when you answer them, it's like 10 minutes, then pop again. When do you get Tansari in the informal settlement?
Sure.
So you must make a conscious decision that you will spend more time on the people you need to get into the system.
Sure.
Otherwise, the country will burn.
Sure.
And it's a trap that we fall in.
Sure.
Because your daily operations on the systems that we've got is normally people who achieve
means.
something in life, who've got the
Absolutely.
means. Now they've got legal means also to tackle you. But the auntie in the informal settlement and her children, how do we create the opportunities for them to lift them out of poverty? And I say the start is with 150 units of electricity.
Wow.
Because then they can enter the space of the electronic space,
Gotcha.
the electronic era.
Yeah.
And I think it's a serious debate that we even in-house in the DA must put on the table.
Yeah, I know in the city of Cape Town, we've increased our waters to 15 kiloliters now a month for those indigent clients. I think we are sitting with almost 300 watts or something like that. And it's a very good point to make, because I think, local government is the government where you're the closest to the people. So you feel them, you hear them, you see them. And we have to make sure that our councils are serving our people, because they've elected us. It's the beauty of local government elections is that it's a direct election. I'm voting for this man that will deliver these services.
Yeah.
It's not I'm voting for a party. Yes, maybe on the second ballot, but the first ballot you are voting for this person to deliver those services. And so it becomes super important that they hold you accountable, but also that you deliver services directly to them. I wanted to come to 2025, because we are now in Jan 2026. You obviously, one of the key points you have now highlighted is that you're asking mayors to start thinking about how do we make living a dignified life more quantifiable and more realistic for people. What are some of the other wins that your department has actually experienced over 2025?
I must actually take it back longer, because one of our strong points in local government is something that we've built over the last 15 years, and that's disaster management.
Wow.
Now, okay, that's every year, but because you're not in a privileged position where you will get hundreds of billions of rand to put just in disaster management. So since 2010, we've started to build the system. Slowly but surely, and my request always to Treasury, and budget cycles, and because we compare in local government space to health for that's for the budget, and education and social services. So it's a difficult debate, but every year I said to Treasury, just don't give me nothing. Just give me something to invest, because I need to build the system, because the disasters is coming. So since 2015, we've started to invest in fire trucks and to rural municipalities. In the metro, you're more privileged. You've got bigger trucks and a bigger budget, but the rural areas didn't have those kind of things. So where I sit now, we've, as a province, handed over 102 fire trucks to our 30 municipalities. And we've built systems. I mean, you identify a risk register, what risk is on our way. And so more petroleum trucks on the road, more chemical on the road, so a hazmat team. So we've got now a hazmat team 25. We've built a second hazmat team for the N2 corridor.
Amazing.
We've got one on the N1 corridor. Because if a petroleum truck is in an accident, you must clear 1 kilometer around that truck, must clear. You can remember what happened in Gauteng with the truck under the bridge and people in the hospital. So it's those kind of issues. And so this year we had 23 aircraft to combat fires in the province. The South African National Defence Force, after long plea and ask for that, one helicopter.
Wow.
And the biggest success for me, it happened still in 2025, was saving the town of Elim. In that evening, I said to myself, we're losing Elim. 70 kilometers went, flames like a double-story building coming towards a huge fuel load with aliens. That evening, I said to myself, we're going to lose Elim. 4 helicopters, ground crew. The smoke was so dense that the helicopter pilots was guided by the ground crew where to throw the water. Wow. They couldn't see. They done it blind. But we saved the town of Elim and we saved the Kop informal settlement. Sure. That was 2 big wins this December.
I remember that Elim fire.
Yeah, Anton, you know, you speak about systems, and I too am one who believes in systems, because you can have any disaster, any sort of risk come your way, but if your system works and your system is in a space, it's innovative, it's forward thinking, it's impenetrable in a way that no matter what happens around it, as long as the system keeps working, it does. And Anton, one of the things, because I mean, I live in Gauteng, born and bred in Johannesburg, but we constantly see fires in the Western Cape, around Table Mountain. I think there was the other one, Dunoon, we were speaking about. There's and it gives to the nature of the Western Cape. There's high winds, there's a lot of dry grass, and you keep speaking about aliens. You need to tell me what that is so that I understand it better. But take us through a little bit around how you manage around fires, because it's something that's devastating the Western Cape consistently.
It's part of the system that we've built. It's part of employing competent people. We've got Dr. Colin Diner from Joburg. He was there. You've built the disaster center for 500 million rand. There was no equipment, I think. So I picked up and I offered him a job. Highly competent person, and we will never look back. Coach him, yeah. And so learning from the best and bringing in competencies and build your system. The system, I've learned a lot from just looking at these professionals, how they operate. And politicians must also understand their role within. I go to a disaster site to deal with the media and the emotion and other politicians so that the professionals can do their job. Because you make hard calls on. I mean, I've been on fires where they decide that home will fall because I must save 6 other homes. Those kind of things. So they must make, and politicians must not interfere into those kind of things. You learn in disaster management also, the politicians must take note of this, that focus on the problem in front of you. A lot of the time when there's a disaster, fire, everybody wants to know, is it arson? Who is... We now save lives, we now save property. We will deal with that tomorrow or after the fire has been put out. So you take away the sound and you work the problem. That's something that I think is very important. We must also distinguish between the rural kind of veld fires and then your Dunoon fires and where informal settlements. And we've embarked on a program because we struggle with this, and a big asset that I think we don't use enough is the universities. We've got fresh minds, fresh ideas. They've got lots of research. So pull them in. Stellenbosch University is doing a lot of research on fires, etc. We partnered with them. And then Santam also came to the table, helped us. So they've designed a smoke alarm, because in many of your informal fires, the deaths are caused by smoke inhalation, not by the fire.
Not by burning,
So we've up till now put 30,000 in. And in that 30,000 where we've put in, we haven't lost a life yet.
Wow.
And we're very grateful for that. But it works because it helps people to get out of the way. And it's those kind of things that you need to keep on investing. So every year we try to put in 5,000 or 10,000. Obviously, there's lots more that we can do, but that's how you build your system.
Sure.
Sure. So, Anton, I mean, you're speaking about the capacity that you have within the department. I mean, one of the other things that we also had a chat about was when Parliament burnt down, and how the president was saying that the disaster team was there within minutes. Can you tell us a bit about that? What happened around Parliament? I mean, we all kind of trying to understand still.
What happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
It's interesting because what I haven't mentioned is the success in our disasters center kind of scenario is partnerships.
Wow.
We've managed to build partnerships over the year. Incredible partners. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I can tell you there's the 4x4 club. I always get it wrong. Sanzra. They like to play in mud. They like to, and they offer their services for free.
Yeah.
So when there's floods and things, remember the first period, the first 2-4 hours, you work with water.
Yes.
But then you start to work with mud. And with the KZN floods, within 4 hours, we had 17 4x4 vehicles, manned. They've gone there and they help.
Wow.
No cost to us.
Sure.
We partner with NSRI for the sea rescue. We partner with the FBAs, the firefighting volunteers. We sometimes contribute towards the equipment, etc., to see that everybody. But by building the system and also through helping municipalities with fire trucks, you've built a united team. So when the fire in Pearly Beach started, we haven't, even from our side, called. Stellenbosch municipality called and said, can we go and help?
Wow.
Drakenstein said, can we help?
Yeah.
Swartland said, we got people we can send.
Wow.
Then we had to say to City of Cape Town, hold back, you cover the rest.
Gotcha.
You must now cover if Drakenstein's firefighters is in Overstrand in Pearly Beach and something happened this side, you will cover. And then the evening when the wind went up to 70 kilometers, the Elam evening, they declare a code red. Now, when you declare code red, we've got a memorandum of understanding between all our municipalities. They've signed a contract. If you call a code red, you pull in all resources. So the City of Cape Town then runs with their resources.
Like a NATO Clause 5.
It's like then everybody's coming together, help. They don't send bills and things. They save lives. And what is important, you don't just rush there. You go under one command center. There's a command. You work under, because you can lose firefighters.
Yes.
You must know where your people are. So it's a very professional kind of system. And I think we're very grateful and privileged that we've got that. And we will keep on building that and going forward. We will never relax on that. The question you ask also, and we're getting to the Parliament, but a lot of things has built up to the success that you can send in people very quickly. And the other morning, I listened on the radio, and there was this debate on the World Cup coming again in 2028 to South Africa. And they've asked the question to the public, what benefit was there in 2010? So the first is, no, they only steal the money, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is the investment in 2010 in firefighting equipment. If you go to the airport, those shiny it was all due to that.
Yeah.
And if you maintain that, then you start to build this fleet of very high quality equipment, etc. And that is what good governance is giving you. City has maintained that fleet, and that is why they can react, because they add on to the fleet. And if the next World Cup that's the fight. Let's get that equipment and that, because long term you will benefit. Even from our smaller municipalities, and now dealing with the fires now in Mossel Bay, where we lost 40 structures. The hospital yesterday in Paul. You always learn lessons. You must. I've now asked Treasury. I've seen the need, because our water tankers capacity is from 5,000 to 10,000 liters. So if a rural community like the dams that burst in Riverlands, now for 4 weeks you must, by tankers, provide water to a community to get this 8 and 10,000 tankers to run up and down,
Sure.
the cost, and you pull a 35,000 litre tanker there, and they operate from there. You put that when there's a fire, you put that, the fire truck use that. They don't have to go and look for a fire
Gotcha.
hydrant. So we're now going to buy a 35,000 litre tanker for each district municipality.
Wow.
George has got one, Hessequa has got one. So we can then start to shift this capability when there's, and then next year we're going to buy another tanker for each municipality, and then we've got 20 in the, or 12 in the province, and then we will be fine when there's a need. You can shift, them, and you can provide water to a community.
So I mean, you know, I'm a
That's
councillor,
amazing.
so I love to put, you know, infrastructure into numbers because that's how we see it. I think it's very clear from what you're saying to us here is that, you know, as a DA-led government in the Western Cape, already you've spent 17 million rand on the fires from 1 December till January now, 2026. But now you're not just stopping there. It's not just a momentary response for you. Actually, you're now thinking 5-10 years going forward and making massive infrastructure development available, regardless actually of what that council, who's the party that's governing there. Because to you, it's not about politics. For the Western Cape government, and I love what your slogan says, it's governing for you. It's governing for the people of the Western Cape, regardless of who your council is governed by.
Exactly, and the people must also, when they go to the polls, understand that you must vote for people that will take this agenda forward and not stop with these agendas, because it's crucial agendas. It's crucial that, and it's one trap that politicians also fall in. They think in 5-year terms. You must think much longer, because the N7, I was the mayor of Swartland. We started with the N7 project. I said to him, yeah, our town must grow, man. Our competition is Cape Town. You guys the competition.
Which year was that again?
2000 and...
You see now. You see now. Okay. So that was 2006.
There you go.
So
There you
myself and the now MM, still was also the longest serving MM, Jochie Skols. We went to Joburg to make a case to Sanral that the N7 must become a double road. They literally laughed at us.
Wow.
The two of us sat on the airport, said to Jochie, the car we hired cost us 350 rand. How the hell are we going to explain this to council? We in trouble, my friend. Now, okay, they laughed at us, and I said to them, you can laugh, but this road will be built. It's just a matter of time. We start this process, there's our plan. So start with your plan. And in 2017, I wasn't the mayor then, but they built the N7.
Sure.
So you must think long term, and on water, on infrastructure. Our big problem, there was a gap where councils neglect the maintenance of infrastructure, and you can see it.
You can see it.
And we need to reverse that. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the system, but we need to, and the Premier also will tell you, we plan 2035, 2040, and then 2050, and the City of Cape Town is on that. You're busy planning a massive 5 billion desalination plant.
Yeah.
Because our plan is we need to get new water into the system, 350,000 megalitres of water by 2035 into the system. And it's not going to happen overnight, because you sit with a backlog, you sit with poor communities that needs to be served. So it's balancing the ship and going forward. But we also use now our leverage to get international capital in. The city, the mayor, the premier is very good into getting international people to believe, first of all. And that is when people miss this sometimes also. When you've got a good, solid government, people want to invest.
Yeah.
That's true.
They come and look for you.
Yeah, stability.
Stability,
So important.
and it's simple things that you need to put in place. You need to be credible.
Yeah.
They need to trust you. It's those kind of things, and you build it through your systems. They can see this municipality. Sure, they listen to us. They want to go forward. They don't walk in and everything is falling apart.
Yeah.
Then they're not going to invest. So we're now busy negotiating, because in disaster management, one of the problems we sit with is the language on ships when people bypass the coast area, and there's people on the ship that fall ill, and there's a language problem. We've got a big language issue, and we can get now an AI system donated to us. Dubai government, they've got brilliant AI systems on language. They speak 86 languages.
Wow.
So by putting that, and you build slowly the system. And by doing that, you protect your people, you help other country, and they will return the favor at the end of the day. So there's still lots to be done. That's only on the local government side. Then you sit with the environmental side. We've got beautiful biodiversity with a big population growth. We put pressure on that. And how do you balance the biodiversity protection? Because that's also a market, a tourism market that will come for you. And how do you protect that for future generations to economic growth where people need to get money, where there's 58% children who don't have. How do we give hope to them?
And let's contrast that with actually one of the most beautiful places on the other, not the west coast, the other coast, the Garden Route,
Southern Coast,
Knysna.
I've been to Knysna once, and it was so amazing. But I went there many, many years ago. I think it was
when it had water.
When it had water, it was a very long time ago, like 2018, 2017. It was a long time ago, and it was absolutely stunning. And I remember going to the markets, and there was a big emphasis on oysters, and they had markets and stuff like that. But now it's quarter to Joburg, where
that's a term.
Quarter to Joburg, because listen, there's no water in Joburg as we speak. There's always a problem with water in Johannesburg, and it seems that Knysna has the same. Go ahead.
Yeah, no wonder you are here every second day. You just come to shower in Cape Town,
right? Goodbye, Joburg. I'm going to have a shower in Cape Town. Can you imagine if you're so privileged to do that?
But let me tell you a story about Knysna. Going back to where I started in 2006 when I was Mayor in Swartland. And we went to Knysna to learn. Knysna had a plan, Knysna 2015. We literally went there with our whole Mako to learn about their vision, where they want to go to with this town. It was a beautiful town. It had everything. Run like a machine. The DA was privileged to govern Knysna around about 2011 to 2015. We've built the desalination plant. Remember, and people must, it's funny when you look back, when I started off, our sewage plants was ponds. You won't believe this. It was like dams, different dams, there were 6 of them. So the sewage water will come into the one, it will settle, it will flow over to the other one. By the 6th one, it will be clean and it will go back to the river. And then once a year you clean the pond. But then with population growth, these ponds and things doesn't work. So we started to build proper engineer sewage plant with air filters and all. Okay, those things need to be run by engineers. And it's specialist equipment, etc. So we built one in Knysna. We've built a desalination plant in Knysna, 2 megaliters of our water. We've built a pump station. Now,
and when you say we, you mean the DA?
The DA
at
governed
that time.
in that time. Okay, they governed, so we built these things. So now people ask me, but you must take responsibility what's happening here. First of all, I don't govern. We've got spheres of govern, not levels of govern. I can give advice but then the people decide that they're not happy with this council. They vote new council. It's a coalition council between. It's nearly like Poikikos. Everything is in there. Everything is in there except the DA. So it's independent party. It's Knysna Kim, you know. It's the EFF. It's the PA. It's the ANC. They're all in this pot together. And it's a big mess. So they decide, listen, we're not going to invest in these things like Eskom.
Of course.
This will run by itself. And it's chaotic. And who suffers? The people suffer. So we then, as a provincial government, went through it's a very difficult and lengthy process, this Article 139 intervention. Because it's one sphere that intervenes into another sphere, and the courts don't like that. So you must have a solid case. We work for 2-3 years to make this case, to build this case, because not that we look, but as we get the complaints, and I cannot just put money into a municipality where there's corruption and where these things just disappear and you don't get value for money. So at the end, I got to a stage where I said, listen, I've got enough information. This place, we must put them under administration. Then when you go that route, the NCOP, National Council of Provinces, got a time frame in which 28 days to say yes or no, and then the national minister. You must go through this hoops.
So there's a process.
So the NCOP politicize this whole thing. They call me to a meeting and they badmouth me. Salga badmouths me. They flew in an ex-councillor of Cape Town just to badmouth me on. I said to him, can I just ask you a question? You open the tap, there's no water. It's not politics. It's bad management. Can we deal with this?
Yeah.
If you don't like my plan, give me a different plan. No. You bring politics here. Even AfriForum's rep, even there was some organization of the taxpayers. No, there's nothing wrong in Knysna. I said, okay. So they reject the 139. 2 months later.
Just, before you continue, after 3-4 years of actually trying to get a case built. Wow.
Now they say, because there's an election, you're now making politics because we're here. I said to them, I can't govern from election to election. There's a problem. You don't have water. Your infrastructure is crumbling. Raw sewage is running into the estuary. The Knysna seahorse is extinct.
Wow.
We're going to lose that. So we say, listen, we need to intervene. They say no. Now, funny, 8 other provinces tell you you're not allowed to intervene into your province. Now, first of all, so they're happy with that standard, people. Yeah. Remember at that stage, the one morning the Premier asked me, Anton, you must go to Knysna, you must go and fix this place. When we rock up there was a body in the reservoir. When they took the body by the arm came off. Okay, so that body was lying there for a week or what. Yeah. Now that water, you will know, goes directly to homes. Yep. It doesn't go, it's already through the filter systems and clean. Okay. So we had to get City of Cape Town people in to come with dry ice and put it in. I will never drink water in Knysna from a tap. I can promise. I'm just one of those people. Yeah. So, okay. So then the mayor phoned me last week in November. He said to me, we're heading towards a crisis. You must come and help.
Sorry, Anton, but I just want us to take a pause on this point. Do people understand what Anton has just said now? We're talking with Anton Bradell, but a dead body in a reservoir that supplies water to communities in Knysna.
That they drink.
That's what we just said.
That they drink. Yeah. And then they have the audacity to say it's political, but when you open the tap, nothing comes out. But if something comes out, it's water that is contaminated.
Absolutely.
So I went there end of November. I said to Maya, I'm not going to politicize this. I'm not going to tell you I told you so. We leaders, we've got a responsibility. Yes, the tourists here. It's our name as well. You're in the Western Cape. Yeah. The two of us, we must fix this place. By the way, his MM went on leave then. For 6 weeks, Christmas leave.
Meaning?
The municipal manager.
Manager, okay.
He's on leave. Myself, my HOD, we all go up here with engineers, geohydrologists, because we need to fix this place. We actually sent the engineers and the geohydrologists 2 days before we had to go there. I didn't contact the DA councillors. I think they crossed with me, but I said I must depoliticize this thing. It's about water now. It's about the community.
Water is life.
Anybody can take the win later on, but can we fix the system? So the first morning we said, listen, we're not going to sit around the table. We're going to walk the system. I want to see. So we go to Charlesfield pump station. First of all, they got lost to their own pump station.
They couldn't even
Secondly,
get there.
when you open the doors, there's 3 pumps. One was just dismantled and gone. I asked him, where's this pump? The one is in Kimberley, the other one is in Botswana, the other one, but some parts is here. Oh my goodness, okay. And the other 2 pumps, they put 10-inch pumps on a 12-inch design. Okay, so they're going to burn out this again. But if you look at the system, because they pump from the river into the system, into the holding dams, etc., the water is running over to the sea. So if we can pump now, we can save Knysna.
Yes.
But we don't have a pump. And all the factories are going to close for Christmas. So we got hold of the person who designed it, this system. He said to the pump that they try to fix, you can write it off. It's specialist pumps. You cannot, if you don't have the right equipment, you cannot fix this pump. I said, what's the cost? 1.5 million rand. He said, buy a pump. Just buy a pump. They've got the money, buy a pump. But now to get the pump, it's now Christmas season. It's difficult.
Yeah.
So from there, we went to the sewage plant. That evening, we gave them a directive on site. That means you tell them this is a legal process. We're going to take you to court. You will pump this water because the ponds, the air filters didn't work. Just stand. So the water just ran into it, and from there it will run into the lagoon. So we open up their old pumps, their old dam system. We say, got a big generator, big pumps, say, pump the sewage out because rain is coming, then all this sewage is going to run into the lagoon. So then we come back to the municipality and say, listen, here's a massive infrastructure problem. This is not a water problem as much as a management and a leadership problem. And then we started, our engineers identified, because I said to them, how do we get water now in the system? Our first target, let's get through December. Then we start to work 2 months on. We start to build this no back into. So a lot of people complain, they say, from day one, you said you've got 17 days of water. Meaning it's a communication, 17 days of holding capacity. So if you add water, you will stretch.
You will stretch,
But you must add water to the system. Okay. So we managed to identify 7 boreholes that they've drilled. The 7 boreholes will give you 4.7 megaliters of water compared to the 12 that they use. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you're still in a deficit.
They're still in a deficit, but it's a lot of water. But there's no pumps. The pump's gone. The pipe's gone.
Goodness.
So you need to fix that. So I said, that's a low-hanging fruit. Let's fix that.
And the MM's gone.
And the MM is holiday. Let's get the springs. Our engineers identified a spring. So we identified the spring. And then I said to them, but listen, if I look on what you present, you cannot account for 50% of your water. It's gone. Where is this water? So we put in teams, 5 plumbing teams during December, now 17 to fix leaks.
Wow.
Our engineers on their waterworks have found a 1 megaliter, 1 million liters of water leak a day. So they fix that. So we start to rebuild. So we very quickly identified 11 megaliters of water. Now, if you've got 11 megaliters of water and you convince the public to save some water, you're fine. You will manage. Okay. So we now busy start to rebuild. My big fear is that there will be water, but that the whole pump system will collapse because it wasn't maintained for 10, 12 years.
Of course.
And we need to rebuild
And you have
now.
to rebuild that capacity.
Sure, that.
That is crazy.
And I really hope the people of Knysna are listening to this podcast so that they know what is happening with their water.
Yeah.
Anton, how and why do the people of Knysna find themselves in the situation that they do?
Well, they trusted the wrong leaders. I mean, sorry, but we need to be honest about this. Knysna's got a leadership and a management problem. I said it openly. I said it to the mayor. The mayor agrees with me. And it's a lesson for all of us because we think that after the next election, we're going to deal with more coalition politics. Now, there's also a difference between coalition politics. I still think that we don't get it right because we talk about coalition politics, but actually we've got king-making politics. So it's small parties that gets control of a municipality.
Sure.
And then you can think you know people, but if you put that chain around their neck, something happens. Something up here. It's like they just get sucked into a corrupt agenda. And it's all about me and not about you anymore. It's not about the people that voted for them. So first of all, it's important that we realize that in a democracy, to make the democracy work, you need to have somebody to lead and somebody to be in opposition. And equally, they play actually equally an important role. Because one is the watchdog, the other one must run with this agenda and build this community, etc. And if you're not good enough, then let's give the other people a chance. But nowadays, with coalition politics coming in, the smaller parties coming in, getting just enough, and they will tell you, their leaders will tell you, we just want the swing vote. We just want the swing vote. That's all we want. Because then the coffers open. And that's a big threat. So my advice to communities when we enter into the new term, please vote for people that you can trust. Vote for people that will fight for you as the community. Because we built South Africa through all the small towns, small municipalities. It's like a puzzle that you built. And we must keep on building.
Anton, it's also important that the people of Knysna know that the DA is not giving up on them. Yep.
No, the DA will never give up on them. It's part of our province. And we want every single municipality to succeed. Something that I struggle sometimes with to get through to mayors because they think Anton is DA, so he's got different agendas for DA council than... Well, maybe I'm more strict with the DA councils because they carry our flag. So on discipline and things, I'm more strict with them. But we want every municipality, because if you're a Democrat, I must accept the outcome, the will of the people.
Absolutely.
If the will of the people tell me they don't want the DA in control, well, I must work with the people they send. And I must give them the same support, etc. So as we sit here, I must give the same support now to Matsikama, to Kanaland, to where people also didn't vote for us in Kanaland.
Yeah.
So it's our responsibility, because there's people living there, there's children living there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to play out at the end of the day, because I think our people become more political wise as well.
Yes.
I just want to call on them, don't give up hope.
Yes.
Vote for the people that will really make a difference in your
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
And the rest will follow.
Well,
agree.
I think that's a very powerful statement to make, because I want to go to the DA-governed municipalities in the Western Cape, where we see those clean audits, where we see those governments delivering. Lungelo, our city manager in Cape Town, once said that, yes, people can't eat clean audits, but show me a government where you have a finding audit, when you have a very bad audit outcome and services are still delivered. It doesn't exist. And so, talk to us about the municipalities that are being governed by the DA and that are getting those clean audits. What are some of the success stories coming from that is actually a beacon of hope for the Western Cape?
There's a lot, and part of our system is part of pulling our mayors. The DA's got a system that we meet once a quarter with our mayors. And what we do in those meetings, it's an open discussion where we learn from best practices. So we get our mayors to share their best practices also. It's something that you build on. So one of the things that, if you want, first of all, you need to get your town's economy to grow. I mean, in Swartland case, it was the N7. That was the catalyst. It's like the selling proposition of the town was the N7. Get that going, and you've got the infrastructure. The rest will follow. The public will just invest. So you need to identify your unique proposition. Municipalities need to, because municipalities differ. Now, we've done the studies in the Western Cape, the growth potential of town study, where we can tell each study what they need to do to get the economy to go.
Wow.
Because you can't build a fish plant in Beaufort West.
Yeah.
Well, then you work with sheep and cattle, those kind of things. So we need to understand that there's so many successes within this space. If I just look at how Drakenstein handled the hospital fire yesterday, it was like that.
Wow.
People could have died. Up till now, we've lost over 100,000 hectares of land. We haven't lost a life.
Sure.
That's amazing.
It says something.
Thank
Now,
goodness.
municipalities also, and remember, it's a DA postcard, but the DA, we don't say we're perfect. We make mistakes. I had to take DA mayors to court. I had to do forensics on DA mayors who went rogue.
Yeah.
But we've got a system where we will enforce that discipline.
Yeah.
The legal system that fails us after that is a problem, and we keep on building that. But a simple example, one municipality, my municipality, the one that I live in, sleep there at night, they've got this system that they open for business and they open for conversation. So a big firm wanted to, they had their factories in 2 towns and they want to consolidate. They phoned the one mayor and they say, listen, we want to come and invest, which was like a 350 million rand investment, etc. Mayor say, yes, I will see you in 6 months' time. I'm very busy. And they phoned Swartland Municipality. The municipal manager said, when do you want to see us? This afternoon. We open our diaries.
Wow.
That afternoon, they met the whole MACO, the mayor, the municipal manager, and all the directors.
Wow.
Where do you think they invested 350 million rand?
Definitely there.
They make
Right on.
that day, that firm make the decision to shift that whole business. And up till now, they've spent over R1 billion.
Wow.
And that's how business operate. So when the premier and the mayor goes to Joburg to tell business what happened here, is to get business to come here because they create jobs and opportunities for our children.
Absolutely.
We need to keep on growing our economy.
Sure.
We
That's
have
amazing.
to jobs.
Indeed.
And can I ask you just an interesting question? I mean, you are the provincial minister of local government. Do you have the power to fire a non-working councillor or a councillor that doesn't deliver to their community?
No, unfortunately not, because we've got a system, and that's also something that we need to do through education. People must understand the system. A councillor discipline vests within the Speaker's office. Yes, it will come to me after the Speaker has done their hearing and their discipline. And it makes sense because these things can become politically manipulated. So there's another sphere that just keep an eye. So if a councillor is non-performing, first of all, if it's a well-run machine, a well-run municipality, there will be performance management.
Yeah.
Swartland's got performance management on their councillors, all their councillors, by the administration.
Sure.
The administrator will once a year come and sit with the mayor and tell him, this is the performance of your councillors according to us.
Wow.
How they attend meetings, their inputs, they've got the measurement system. So if you fail that, the Speaker should do the disciplinary. Then they will send their recommendation to me if they want to fire the councillor. And then I must look through the process. If it's fair, we will fire them.
Okay.
Okay. I think that explains.
I
now
think
for the
I think you want to try and get rid of me. Eh?
Listen, there are some councillors that really don't do much. I just have an interesting question because there's quite some drama happening in Johannesburg, and I want to find out, and it might be a bit of a stupid question, but I'm not asking
pray for
anyway.
you.
So, let's say, for example, there's a resident that wants to debate a councillor, right? Let's just say they
I
want to
saw
debate.
this.
Did you see it? They want to debate a councillor. What rights do citizens have to hold their councillors accountable, whether it be through debates or, I don't know, interviews,
Public meetings.
or because I mean, normal citizens can't submit written questions and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
how do you think it should work? Do you think that councillors should have open dialogue and debates with residents?
Open dialogue is a win-win situation for everybody if we matured enough to understand the open dialogue. Remember, it's like corruption. When people confront me about politics now, when you've got children, when you've got young children, they in school they won't be actually able to tell the teacher their parent is in politics because it's like telling him that your parents are gangsters. There's something towards, because then you corrupt. Exactly. So they must.
never clear cut.
The poor kids. The poor kids. That's the same. You asked me about firing councillors and. But there's also a lot of good councillors. There's a lot of councillors that day and night work for their community. But to go back to my argument, if there's a corrupt politician, there's also a corrupt businessman or somebody out there. You can't steal from yourself.
Yeah.
So, and the same year, there's a lot of NGOs and who's got hidden agendas. So I'm not interested in going into a mouse-slinging match because nobody's going to benefit from them. And I actually should have, we've designed now for our ward committee 7 booklets, guidelines on explaining government, explaining the government system, how your council operate, and so we're going to take that now to all the ward committees.
So good.
We've translated in 3 languages for the Western Cape people, and I'm now looking at making 1 or 2 of them in Braille for our people in Worcester and those kind of areas. The debate needs to happen through the system. Actually, you've got, and it's something that we also need to grapple with in the DA. Your first meeting in a month, I think, should be your ward committee meetings. There, the public can give your inputs, they can bring it, and the minutes of that meeting should become the agenda of your committees in the council.
Okay.
And the minutes of that should go to either the MM or the mayoral's committee where the decisions are, and then the loop back to feedback.
Okay.
I think if we can get that right, it will help a lot with the communication. When I go to a municipality now, because we're now heading drought, very much water, and as soon as you enter that space, quality of water has become an issue. I don't want to see the community because it's angry and we're not going to move forward.
Yeah.
Give me 5 people, let's sit, let's say, yes, this is wrong, we make it right. A story you will laugh at, it was the 24th of December because I had meetings in Graafwater and then I had to drive to Plet and then to Knysna, and the 24th of December there was big issues with the quality of the water in Tulbagh.
Okay.
So myself, the HOD, Water Affairs, went to Tulbagh the 24th of December, and I went in, I was tired. I said to him, listen, I'm not here to fight with you. We are 10 people of the community, I'm not here to fight. What's the solution? Let's get now. They had bottles of water they carry in Coke bottles, and the person from Water Affairs asked them, but pour it in a glass. And I was sitting on the end, and they smell at the water and they pass it on. The glass got to me, and I take the glass, I drink the glass of water. I say, okay, that's right, let's go. And the people's eyes went like, what the hell happened now? And my HOD sitting next to me said, I hope your home is quite near this place. I said to him, listen, yes, iron in the water.
Yeah.
Plaas in, ek ken brakwater. You know, it's not right. Can we supply tankers to you? We will filter this. We will get back, and we will get 7 days to put filters in. And everybody was happy. But that break the ice, me drinking the water.
How were you afterwards?
No, fine. I know. Iron in water makes the whites very cross when they do the washing, because it's like brown.
It stains the clothes.
But it doesn't kill you. So
they were not expecting that.
That's the confidence you absolutely need. Well, if you're still listening, we are talking to the minister, the provincial minister of local government, environmental affairs and development planning, Minister Anton Bredal. Minister, we've got a quick round of questions for you.
Shoot.
It's a one-word sort of answer. I'll start it off. Tell me, braai at home or eating
Braai.
at the... I don't know if you can. Braai place would be cooler.
Okay, so if you were not doing politics, what would you be doing?
business.
Okay, in what business? Just generally?
Saying business generally, I love the interaction within business. But my hobby, if you ask me if I read, I don't read. I read my work, but my hobby is woodworking.
Okay.
And I love to work with recycled wood.
That's
So
cool.
if I'm in my... If I had a very stressful day and I know I'm not going to sleep, I go to my garage, close the door.
And you just cut it away.
Cut it away.
Pop out a table.
Wow.
Come out with a table and a
Most
chair.
of my furniture I make myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your wife must be so happy to be like, yo,
Well, she's happy to
husband.
get me in the garage. I'm going to tell you this one. The other day, we know elections and election cycles. So my wife looked at me. She said, listen, you start to think about retirement. I said, yeah, you're not far off. She said, no, let's just have this conversation. She said, sit down. She said, listen, you leave the house 5:30 in the morning. You get back home, if I'm lucky, 7 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Maybe that's why our marriage worked. She said to me, so if you retire, you leave this home at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't want to see you before 5. Okay? That's a deal. Not, love, what are we going to eat?
Yeah.
What are we doing today?
You leave, you can sit in your garage after you do my list, because there's also a list, and that's it. Then we'll settle.
Oh my
So
gosh.
funny.
You're going to have to get used to farming.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Okay, my one for you, Anton, is TikTok or a typewriter?
Ooh.
Which one do you prefer?
He's going to ask you, what is TikTok?
No, you won't.
You know, some politicians on TikTok, I just laugh at them and I pray for them because, it doesn't look good. But no, typewriter.
Wait, I have to ask, is it because they're doing those funny dances and stuff on TikTok?
Listen, I think sometimes, politicians want to be popular and I'm not... I want to do my job.
That's what your style is.
I want to do my job. I want to be there for the community, and it's not about me. And I think sometimes we go on TikToks and we do try to be funny, but we're actually looking stupid.
That's true.
You know, so it's a fine line.
It's just a sage advice to all the young politicians out there.
It's a gimmick.
It's a gimmick.
A lot of the time it's a gimmick.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. I don't have anyone now. My mind is blank. Do you know anything on your side?
No, I think I'm still stuck on the TikTok.
It's all these things are tools. I had this conversation this morning because part of the success in Nice Night, we don't give credit to that, is the communication. And I've learned it in disaster, because in disaster center we struggled in the beginning. with social media. Shucks, all the rumors, all the false messages. So I said, listen, you know what? To win this, we must have somebody in the disaster center as the disaster happened, and you just feed the truth. You just feed the right messaging, the truth to the people. And you must be honest with the people. That's why last week I went out, I say thank you to the NISNA team. We've increased the dam level from 15 to 19%. We're there now, we're pushing, and we keep on pushing. Because if you take the public in your confidence, they will work with you.
Absolutely. And sometimes people just want to know what is going on.
Absolutely.
They don't want to hear the political, waxing lyrical, the political talk. People don't care about that. When they open up their taps, they want to see water. When they are walking to the spaza shop or going to the shop, they want to have street lights that work. They want to have grass that is cut. They want to have streets that is not riddled in potholes. People just want the basic services.
Absolutely.
And they don't care about anything else. And I think that's what we have to go into this year. What they're talking about this year, it's a big year. It's an election year.
Massive.
What is at stake?
Everything is at stake. We're running out of time.
Sure.
If you look at the infrastructure of a place like Knysna, if you multiply that by 240, we're in trouble.
Sure.
We're in trouble in the lack of infrastructure, lack of maintenance of infrastructure. And even if you get the right people in place now, it's going to take time. You will look at the city of Cape Town. I mean, if you fix the Milnerton Lagoon, now I've got something like 18 directives against you.
You do.
But because we hold one another accountable. Irrespective it's a DA-run council, they need to account. But we work with the municipality because they work with us. They invest. So their program to 2027 is something like 6 billion rand. I said to them, the day you cut that ribbon, you're going to be behind again. Because of the influx is an ugly word for me because of migration. People got the right to migrate, but of course people moving to where there's good governance. And we also got this debate inside. We said to, everybody's moving to Cape Town, man. 27% growth. What are we going to do? Because Cape Town, we expect 1 million people moving to Cape Town in the next 8-9 years. That's Bloemfontein.
Wow.
So if you look at Cape Town, with the space you've got, you must build a Bloemfontein with all the schools, all the hospitals, all the infrastructure within 8 years. And you sit with a backlog in infrastructure.
Yes.
So how the hell do you do that? And therefore the mayors move towards an 8% spent on infrastructure. And we need to get all municipalities in that thinking. And so it's not something that can happen overnight. If you go wrong, it's going to take years to rebuild Knysna. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years. So City of Cape Town, just on that program, it's 6 billion. The water, to get water security is a 5 billion rand project. So it's big money, it's big amounts. And remember, like the city, they've got a couple of big sewage plants that they need to invest in. So if you don't get to the 8%, and if people vote now somebody else in power, and they stop that 8%, or they make it 4%, the city will be polluted, we will lose income, and we will start the backward cycle.
And Anton, I mean, just on that, because, I serve on the water and sanitation portfolio. It's not the sexy stuff, perhaps underground plants that no one understands. It's not the sexy stuff. And so easily you can get a party like the Patriotic Alliance that can come and say, they are not doing anything for you. They're not serving you because all you have is water. Yes, they should be. And I often say about local government, people often say, don't praise the fish for swimming. There is no fish swimming in South Africa. Most of the municipalities are broken. They are, under-resourced. They don't have money. And so when you do get a municipality that works, it's actually a blessing because they've been doing the right thing. And so you can easily get a party that can rob you from that opportunity for long-term investment, and you have a situation where you're actually sitting without water, and in most cases polluted water. You're sitting with roads that are full of potholes, streetlights that's not working, and you have a situation where people that are supposed to be living a dignified life don't, and all because they've believed a politician that was populist in their nature saying to them that we will change your life. Actually, their lives became much worse.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And people don't want to hear this. But in a democracy, and we've got a democracy, the people get what they vote for. A lot of people complain. They must just look in the mirror. First of all, if you don't vote, don't complain. Secondly, if you vote and you vote for the wrong person, well, you've got now the time to make it right.
Sure.
And if in a democracy, you're going to get what you vote for.
Yes.
And so everybody as a collective need to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Anton, one of the things before we move quickly and let you go is, what do we have to expect going forward in the near future in your department? What do people have to look out for? What are some of the exciting things that you have planned? Anything that you can give us the first scoop around this bonfire of ours?
Scoop.
Or as Nestle says, give us the tea.
Give us the tea.
Is there any tea you can serve to us before?
Well, we're different. We've got different passions and things that we drive at, because in a big department, there's a lot of things going on. I'm going to drive this dignified debate. I really think we owe it to our people. And in-house is going to be a heated debate as well. People going to confront us with the money issue, and I think it will help us to mature our argument.
Yeah.
You must better your argument. Don't fight with me. Better your argument. Bring your argument.
Yeah.
But if we want to get, the question is jobs, and how do you get people out of poverty?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't want a wife or a child who don't have water in their house or electricity. So how can... It cannot be my wish for other people.
Yes.
So that's one big thing. After every season, we've got like a nabetrachting. We look back, say what have we done wrong, what could we have done better, and that's always a very interesting conversation. We do it with the city of Cape Town, all the municipalities, and we pull that in and see where we need to invest, and that's where also this 35,000 tankers is coming from, those kind of debate. But in-house, we haven't touched a lot on biodiversity. We've got a biodiversity strategy that we need to roll out. We've managed to land climate change in the middle of our debate in budget. So over time, that will help us a lot, because climate change is eating us up very slowly. And so we've got a climate change strategy. We're the only province who's got that.
Nice.
Wow.
We've got a housing policy, and then we've got a integrated housing policy with I don't think maybe Gauteng's got one, but no other province. So how are we going to integrate communities is a policy, and we landed in different formats in different municipalities, depend on the needs of those municipalities, but we've done the homework. The housing policy was very interesting with the University of Stellenbosch. There's towns where a house above 3.5 million rand is always cash sales. Banks don't do business in that. There's a town in the Western Cape. So we found those kind of things. But the main purpose of this was, how do we get developers and private sector to start to play into the 300 to 900,000 markets?
Gotcha.
And we're busy grappling with that with municipalities. Obviously, it's a subsidy, cross-subsidization kind of things. So there's 110 very exciting things that we've got a 15-year water plan that we now done all the work on, and we're going to train 2 municipal officials in each municipality to explain the back office to the leaders. Because we can now tell every municipality what's your backlog in infrastructure, so what must you budget over 15 years. You need to be level or ahead. So what budget must you put to that? And how do you build that? What budget must you put in, so we connect that to the growth potential study of towns? Say Stellenbosch is going to grow by 4% as well population. If you want a 4% growth, you're going to need X, Y water. So to get there, this is the investment you need to do. So we've got that program now, and we've got it for each municipality. So that's going to help us. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. So we must now just get the trust of the voters back into office, so that we can keep on building. And we don't tell them we're perfect. We make mistakes, but we will act when we make mistakes, and we will always keep them at the front of our agenda.
And just quickly, you do wear 2 different hats. You are also the deputy chairperson of the Democratic Alliance.
Yes, sir.
Can you just quickly, for the people watching at home, as we go into these elections, why vote DA?
Well, the DA is a fantastic machine that we've built over years. Had different conversations on what's in the best interest of the country. I think we've learned the lessons. We, although I still think we can do better, I think we're the party where we debate issues, where we put issues on the table. The agenda on an open opportunity society for all, freedom, fairness, and opportunities for all. It's difficult concepts. It's difficult to deal with that, and you can even see in our interviews how people perceive it differently. But that's learning. We're South Africa, where we've got so many cultures, so many, and I always tell people, our diversity is our strength. It's not a negative, it's a positive. We must just accept it.
Yeah.
Accept it, and we're the most diverse, nobody can argue with that. We're the most diverse party in the country. We said it, when we started this agenda, we said, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
This is a difficult thing, to bring people from different cultures, beliefs, backgrounds together to focus on one agenda. It's never going to be easy. And we will make mistakes, but that's the only way to build a united South Africa. And sport has shown us, rugby has shown us that.
Absolutely.
We can get through this.
Sure. You just touched me in my feelings, Anton.
Right.
I must say, what an incredible conversation we've had. I've learned so much, not just about you, but about your departments and the work that you do. Of course, we're in conversation with the Provincial Minister, Anton Bredell, Provincial Minister of Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Sure, it's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
Sure. But I must say, the way you look at leadership and the way you center the people of South Africa is inspiring. And I really hope that a lot of people can watch this podcast and learn a lot from you, because I have learned so much from you. But the last thing, can you please sing us your favorite song?
Please, Minister.
No. I'm from Malmesbury. We don't sing. We pray. You know. What we will do is we will pray for you in Gauteng. That we can do.
On spit.
God knows we
vir jou.
need.
Dat kan ons vir jou doen.
If the whole of the Western Cape can please pray for Gauteng.
Kyk, look. The one guy once asked me about the rugby fans and Blue Bulls, and said, before I wear a Blue Bull t-shirt, you can rather find me naked on the street. So I can tell you now, before I'm going to sing to you, you can rather find me naked on the street.
Well, there we have it. Very, very much grateful conversation to you, Anton Bredell. Thank you for joining us. I mean, I think I can just echo Naslie's words, and I think Donovan probably feels the same. Thank you so much for your time, and also just giving us so much insight that we really do here in this particular space. And so I'm very grateful for that. And so to people watching at home, thank you again for joining us on this podcast. And I'm going to need a little bit of help from Naslie and Donovan.
We got you.
We're going to say this. We're trying it out. It goes. You guys ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Thank you for joining us for the Real
Political Talk
straight to you. Thank you.